In 1911, the ranchers of northern Montana began hearing something in the snow. Not footsteps, not an animal, something heavier, something that moved with a slow, deliberate rhythm, as if measuring the land with each step. It traveled beneath the frost, close enough to feel through the ground, but never close enough to see. Before anyone understood what it was, the fear had already settled in. Dogs refused to go outside after dusk. Horses froze with their heads turned toward the tree line, ears locked on something invisible. And every few nights, a long, low sound drifted across the valley. Not a howl, not a growl, something caught halfway between breath and hunger. When the first body was found, people tried to blame wolves. But wolves do not move without tracks. Wolves do not break bone without tearing flesh. And wolves do not stand upright at the edge of a ridge, watching ranch houses from a distance until the sun disappears. The men who went looking for answers believed they were tracking a predator. They did not understand that the predator had already chosen them. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe and tell us where you are watching from. Now let me take you inside the final surviving testimony from the 1911 Montana shadow wolf incident. I remember the cold that morning more clearly than anything else. It was the kind of cold that did not sting or bite, but pressed itself against your skin like a warning. It held the air still in a way that felt unnatural. There was no wind moving through the pines, no branches creaking under the weight of frost, no distant call of birds waiting for the sun. Even our breath rose slowly, drifting upward, as if the world itself had decided to move in a quieter rhythm. Frost lifted from the ground in thin, ghost-like trails, curling into the air like the exhale of something sleeping just beneath the snow. That was when I realized the silence was not just silence, it was attention. The land felt as though it was listening to us. We had only been walking for an hour when I saw the first track. At first, I thought the light had tricked me. Snow can play strange games with the eyes when the sun is still low, but the closer I stepped toward it, the more wrong it became. It was enormous, wider than any wolf track I had seen in all my years in those mountains. Deeper too, so deep the snow around the edges had compressed into a smooth, icy bowl. And stranger still, there were only two prints, not a trail, not a pattern, just two careful, deliberate impressions, as if the creature had paused there to decide which direction to take next. I crouched beside them, tracing the edges with my eyes. They were spaced far apart, almost unnaturally far, suggesting a stride that no animal should have. Wolves lower their bodies when they walk in deep snow. They shift their weight to preserve strength. Whatever made these prints had not done that. It had walked with a tall, heavy gait, placing each step with intent, as if it did not need to conserve energy at all. Tom moved beside me without a word. He lowered himself to one knee and brushed the edge of the nearest track with the back of his glove. I heard the faintest crackle of melting frost. His brows tightened. Then he pressed his hand closer and pulled back. "The snow is warm," he said softly. I leaned in, and he was right. The frost at the rim of the track had melted just enough to expose damp soil, not from the sun. The morning light was weak and sharp, still trapped behind a veil of thin clouds. Whatever left that track had done so recently, and with enough heat or weight to disturb the ground beneath it. Tom looked at me, his face pale beneath his beard. "We should go back," he whispered. "This isn't a wolf." I knew he was right. Every instinct I had was telling me the same thing, but instinct can be drowned by curiosity, and sometimes pride speaks louder than caution. Ranchers had lost livestock for weeks. Some had lost horses. Others had heard strange sounds in the night, sounds they could not describe without their voices shaking. We had come to track whatever was responsible, and now we had its prints in front of us. Proof, evidence, something real at last. But none of that explains why I took the first step forward. None of that explains why Tom followed me. Maybe we believed that turning back would mean admitting the stories were true. Maybe we wanted to prove we were braver than the fear settling in our stomachs. Or maybe the creature wanted us to follow. We continued through the trees, leaving the safety of the trail behind and moving deeper into the timberland. The air felt colder the further we walked, as if the light struggled to reach the forest floor. The silence did not lift, it thickened. Even the snow beneath our boots seemed hesitant to crunch. With every step, I felt something closing around us, a sensation that whatever had made those tracks was not fleeing, it was waiting. The further we walked into the timberland, the quieter the world became. It happened gradually at first, subtle enough that I did not notice until the silence felt dense, as if the air itself thickened between the trees. Even the soft rustle of our coats seemed too loud. Snow always muffles sound, but this was different. This silence had weight. It pressed against us from all sides, settling over the land like a blanket stretched too tightly. I kept glancing upward, expecting to see crows circling above the tree line. They were always there in winter, waiting for scraps or movement. Today the sky was empty. Not a single black wing cut across the pale morning light. The forest felt abandoned, as if every living thing had agreed to hide from something we were foolish enough to pursue. The tracks continued ahead of us, widening in their spacing with every 100 steps. Whatever we were following covered ground far faster than any natural creature should. At first, the prints were twice the distance of a large wolf's stride, then 3 times. Eventually, the trail stretched so far between steps that I had to look back to insist I was still seeing a pattern, not isolated impressions left by random melting or shifting snow. But no, the tracks were deliberate, left by something that moved with certainty. Tom walked beside me without speaking. His shoulders were stiff, and he kept his rifle angled slightly forward, not high enough to aim, but no longer resting casually at his side. A man's body gives away fear long before his words ever will. Mine probably told the same story. We walked like that for nearly an hour before the trees opened abruptly into a clearing. It was a place I had never seen. Not in all my years riding that land. I knew every ridge, every creek, every slope where snow gathered thickest. But this clearing felt wrong, as if it had appeared overnight. The edges were too sharp. The trunks surrounding it leaned slightly inward, like they had grown that way in response to something they did not understand. The snow in the center had been disturbed in a strange, swirling pattern. It looked as though something massive had rolled or twisted in it, compressing the powder so deeply that the earth beneath was exposed. The marks spiraled outward in wide arcs, almost graceful despite the violence required to shape them. I stepped closer, studying the ground. Heat had touched this place too. Thin tendrils of steam curled upward, dissolving into the cold air. The prints from earlier suddenly felt small compared to the breadth of this disturbance. Tom's voice broke the stillness. "Look at the trees!" I turned, and my breath caught. The trunks surrounding the clearing were scarred by deep claw marks, not at the base where a bear or large cat might reach, but high up, much higher. The marks were carved 2 hands above any wolf's reach. Some were even higher than my own chest. The grooves were straight, powerful, and evenly spaced, like fingers dragging through bark without hesitation. Tom stepped nearer to one of the trees, tilting his head back to trace the full length of the marks. His face had gone pale again. "No wolf stands tall enough to scratch bark at that height," he whispered. He was right, and hearing the words spoken aloud made the air feel colder, a cold that had nothing to do with the season. But neither of us wanted to name the truth, because the truth meant we were not tracking a predator we understood. It meant we were trespassing in the territory of something older, stronger, and far more deliberate. So we kept calling it a wolf, not because we believed it, but because the other possibility was worse. Much worse. We set up camp because the sun was falling fast, and neither of us wanted to navigate unfamiliar timberland in the dark. Even so, something felt wrong the moment we stopped moving. It was as if the forest had been waiting for us to be still. Tom gathered fallen branches while I cleared enough ground to place the fire. The snow resisted my movements, heavy and cold, as though something beneath it did not want to be disturbed. When the fire finally caught, the flame burned low at first, flickering weakly as if unsure it wanted to exist in that place. Only after feeding it more wood did it rise high enough to cast a circle of light around us. But the light did not bring comfort. It only showed how quickly the darkness gathered beyond it. Night settled without a sound. The trees did not sway. No wind moved across the clearing. The world seemed to draw itself inward, shrinking to the small space our fire illuminated. I could not shake the feeling that something was circling just beyond the edge of that light, staying perfectly still each time I turned my head, waiting for some signal only it understood. Tom tried to speak a few times, but each attempt died in his throat. Fear has a way of making even simple words feel dangerous. We ate in silence and kept glancing toward the tree line, expecting something to step out of it. It didn't, but the horses felt it long before we did. It began with a soft snort, then another, then the sound of hooves pawing nervously at the frozen ground. When I turned, both animals were tense, muscles locked, staring into the trees with the kind of focus you only see when prey recognizes a hunter. Their eyes were wide, white at the edges, and their breath came in fast, shuddering bursts. I whispered to Tom to stay still. The horses were not just frightened, they were warning us. Then I felt it, a vibration beneath the earth, subtle yet impossibly heavy, not the kind of rumble you get from shifting stones or settling soil. This was deeper, slower, a pressure that came and went in a measured rhythm, like footsteps placed far away, yet strong enough to travel through the ground. Tom reached for his rifle. I grabbed his arm before he could lift it. "Don't move," I whispered. The vibration continued for several seconds. Then it stopped so abruptly that the silence afterward felt violent. Even the fire crackled too loudly. We listened, we waited. The forest gave nothing back. Minutes dragged into an hour. The horses eventually settled, though they refused to lie down. They stayed standing with their heads lowered, ears flicking at sounds too faint for us to hear. Tom and I slept in shifts, though sleep is a generous word for what we managed. Each time I closed my eyes, I could still feel the echo of those steps beneath the ground. Sometime near dawn, a faint breeze moved through the clearing. It should have been comforting, but instead it carried a strange scent. Not rot, not animal musk. Something metallic, cold, sharp. A smell that did not belong to any creature I had ever encountered. I sat up and scanned the tree line. Nothing moved. The scent faded as quickly as it came. Tom woke with a start, gripping his rifle as if he had been dreaming of losing it. "Did you hear something?" he asked. "No," I said. "But something was here?" He didn't question it. He felt it too. We fed the fire and waited for the first light to break through the branches. When it finally did, it looked weaker than usual, as if hesitant to touch that part of the forest. We packed quickly. Neither of us said it out loud, but we knew the truth. Something had walked close to our camp during the night. Something heavy, something watching, and whatever it was, it had not finished with us yet. By the time the sun cleared the treetops, the forest felt different, lighter in some places, darker in others, as if the night had rearranged pieces of it while we slept. The air held a sharp bite, colder than before, but beneath that coldness was something else. A scent I could not place at first. It drifted in and out with the slightest movements of wind, faint and metallic, like rusted iron or the inside of an old well. I had smelled blood before, and this was not blood. I had smelled rot before, and this was not rot. This scent felt clean and wrong at the same time, as though the air itself had been altered. Tom stepped beside me, pulling his coat tighter around his shoulders. "You smell that?" he asked quietly. I nodded. "I smelled it last night too." He looked at me then, and for the first time since we left the ranch, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not the kind of fear a man hides behind humor or stubbornness. This was the fear you feel when something unseen has chosen you. When you realize that running might help you live, but you are no longer sure where you should run to. We broke camp quickly. Every movement felt clumsy, as if our hands refused to work the way they should. My mind kept drifting back to the vibration under the ground from the night before. I had told myself it must have been shifting frost or settling roots, but the more I thought about it, the more foolish that explanation became. Ice settles once, the earth shifts once, but whatever we felt had moved in a steady rhythmic pattern. It had been walking. We started along the trail again, following the prints from yesterday. They had changed. The edges of the tracks were sharper, cleaner, as if the creature had placed them with more force or intent. Some prints were so deep the snow around them had melted into slush. Something warm had passed through here not long before dawn, and the spacing was wider, much wider. Tom stopped and measured the distance between two prints with his eyes. "That's not possible," he said, but possibility had already abandoned us. The forest thickened as we continued, the pines crowding closer together. Their branches hung low under the weight of frost, forming a tunnel of shadow and white. Even the air felt tighter inside that corridor. The sunlight above struggled to break through, flickering between the branches like firelight. That metallic scent returned, stronger this time. It drifted past my face, and I froze mid-step. The smell was clearer now, unmistakable. It was not metal, it was breath, cold breath. Something in these woods exhaled that smell. Tom lifted his rifle without being told. "Where is it coming from?" he whispered. "I don't know," I answered. But I did know. I just didn't want to say it. The scent was not coming from one direction. It was surrounding us. We pushed deeper into the trees until the forest opened into another small clearing. At the center, the snow had been disturbed again, but not in a chaotic way like before. This time, the disturbance formed a shallow depression, smooth and almost oval, as if something had lain there to rest. Around the edges of that depression, the snow was melted into thin rivulets that had frozen again into delicate glassy threads. They looked like veins spreading outward through the frost. Tom crouched beside it and ran his glove across the surface. "It was here," he murmured, "not long ago." I circled the clearing, searching for tracks. I expected them everywhere, but the snow was unbroken. No prints leading in, no prints leading out. "It's not walking the way an animal does," I said quietly. Tom didn't answer. He knew I was right. Something was moving through this forest without leaving a trail, something that did not care about being found, something that might already know we were following it. The metallic scent drifted through the clearing again, colder this time, so sharp it made my eyes sting. Tom looked at me and whispered the question we were both thinking. What if it's not running at all? I let the silence answer him, because deep in my chest, beneath the cold and the fear and the hollow in my stomach that had been growing since dawn, I already knew the truth. It wasn't running, it was leading us, and we were still following. We reached the ridge by late afternoon, just as the last of the weak winter sunlight stretched across the mountains. The ridge was a long strip of exposed rock where the trees thinned suddenly, leaving leaving the land open in a way that made my skin crawl. After hours of walking beneath a heavy canopy of pines, stepping into that openness felt wrong, as if we had wandered into a place we were not meant to see. The ground was dusted with a thin layer of snow that the wind had swept into narrow lines, revealing patches of dark stone beneath. Everything about that ridge felt stripped bare. No tracks, no branches, no cover, just sky above us and the long, narrow stretch of land ahead. Tom slowed behind me. I could hear his boots scraping across the rock. Hesitant, unsure, something in the air had changed again. Even the silence felt different. It was sharp now, not heavy like before, but brittle, as if the world was waiting for something to break. That was when I saw it, at the far end of the ridge, standing near the drop-off, where the land fell away into a valley of shadow. A shape rose against the pale horizon. At first I thought it was a tree, a dead trunk left behind by some storm. But there were no trees on that ridge. Nothing should have been standing there. The shape was tall like a man, but wrong in every possible way. Its posture was unnaturally straight, yet its shoulders rose too high, creating a narrow, elongated frame that did not match the proportions of a human body. The head was lowered slightly, as if it were studying the ground. But even with that tilt, its height towered above anything natural. Its arms hung alongside its body with a stillness that felt deliberate rather than rigid. And it was pale, not the white of snow, but a cold, colorless pallor that seemed to absorb the fading light instead of reflecting it. For several seconds, I didn't breathe. I don't think Tom did either. He stepped closer to me, his voice barely a whisper. "If that's a wolf," he said, "then it's standing on two legs." I wanted to answer him. I wanted to tell him it wasn't possible, that wolves do not stand upright, that wolves do not stretch nearly twice the height of a man. But my voice refused to move. My hands refused to move. Even the air in my lungs felt trapped, held in place by the same terrible force that kept that creature from stepping forward. It did not move. It only watched us. Even from that distance, I could feel its attention like a physical pressure on my skin. It was not curiosity. It was not fear. It was recognition, a silent awareness that we had been following its trail, that we had crossed whatever boundary it lived within. The wind shifted suddenly, sweeping across the ridge in a long, hollow breath that carried the metallic scent we had smelled all morning. This time it was stronger, sharper, so close, it felt like the creature was standing right beside us, breathing against the back of my neck. My eyes watered from the cold, from the scent, or from the fear. I couldn't tell which. I blinked once, just once, and when my vision cleared again, the ridge was empty. The creature was gone, not walking away, not slipping behind a tree, gone. Tom lifted his rifle and spun in a full circle, searching the tree line below, as if the thing might reappear behind us. But there was nothing, only empty rock and the growing darkness. I stepped forward slowly, as if movement might wake whatever had just vanished. My boots crunched lightly against the snow, and the sound felt too loud in the dead air. I reached the spot where the creature had stood. The snow there was disturbed, pressed down in a deep, narrow shape that did not resemble a footprint or paw print or anything I could name. Tom stared at the indentation, swallowing hard. "We should leave," he said. For once, I didn't argue, because the truth had settled in my chest with the weight of a stone. We had not found the creature. It had allowed us to see it, just long enough to warn us what we were following. We left the ridge without speaking. There was nothing to say. The creature had not simply vanished. It had withdrawn. It had stepped out of sight the way a predator steps behind a tree when it decides the distance is no longer interesting. The air behind us felt open, but the air ahead felt thick, as if something waited just beyond our reach. The tracks returned a few minutes later, but they were different now. The prints were deeper, cleaner, as if whatever made them had started placing its weight with purpose. They stretched across the snow in long strides that bordered on impossible. Some were spaced so far apart that we had to jog between them to keep pace with the trail. Tom slowed as he studied one of them. "It's changing direction," he said, circling. He was right. The tracks no longer formed a straight path. They curved slightly, then sharply, then straightened again. The creature was not fleeing. It was positioning itself, testing angles, shortening distance in ways that felt calculated rather than instinctive. I didn't want to admit what that meant. Tom knew anyway. "It's stalking us," he whispered. The metallic scent returned, drifting in short breaths across the snow, brushing against the back of my throat. It felt closer each time, like someone walking just behind us, exhaling slowly to see how we might react. We kept moving, faster now, trying to stay ahead of whatever was pacing us. The forest around us grew darker as the sun slipped lower, turning the snow a dull gray blue that made every shadow look deeper than it should. Branches creaked above us, but not from wind. Something heavy brushed against them, gliding from tree to tree without touching the ground. At one point, Tom raised his lantern toward the treetops. The light caught something pale. A long, narrow shape moved between the branches, too fast to focus on, but large enough to make the pine needles tremble in its wake. It did not leap, it floated, not in the air but across it, like a figure weightlessly shifting through a veil. Tom nearly dropped the lantern. "That wasn't a wolf," he said, voice cracking. Before I could answer, the forest below us erupted in noise. Snow cascaded from the hillside in waves, shaking loose from branches and rolling down the slope. Something massive was moving parallel to us, hidden behind the curve of the land. The sound was not frantic, it was measured, slow, each impact heavy enough to vibrate through the ground. We froze, the snow below kept shifting. Then the sound stopped, everything settled into silence so absolute it hurt my ears. Tom turned to me, his face pale. "Where is it?" Before I could answer, the snow 3 meters behind us buckled downward, as if something enormous stepped onto it from above. The ground dipped, cracked, and released a low groan. Tom spun, raising his rifle, but there was nothing to see, only deep, fresh impressions sinking slowly into the powder, one after another, circling us like invisible footprints pressed by an unseen weight. They moved clockwise first, then counterclockwise, then straight toward us. I grabbed Tom's sleeve. "Run!" We stumbled forward, slipping on loose ice and uneven ground. The forest blurred around us as branches whipped against our coats. Behind us, the invisible steps struck the snow with increasing force, matching our pace exactly, not faster, not slower, just enough to stay close. The creature wasn't trying to catch us, it was herding us. We didn't know why until the trees opened into a narrow ravine, and we realized what it had been guiding us toward, a dead end, a trap. The moment we stepped into it, the creature's footsteps stopped. Silence fell, cold, enclosing. Tom raised the lantern with a shaking arm. That was when the shadow on the far wall moved. It stretched upward, taller than any tree, unfolding slowly like a body remembering how to fit inside its own shape. Long arms, a narrow frame, a head bent at the wrong angle. It had not been chasing us, it had been waiting here, and now we had nowhere left to run. The shadow on the ravine wall moved with a slowness that made my skin crawl, not because it hesitated, but because it moved the way a body moves when it does not rely on muscle or bone. It rose as if pulled upward by some silent force, stretching into a tall, narrow outline that looked almost human in shape, yet unmistakably wrong in every proportion. Tom lowered the lantern without meaning to. The light shook in his hand, casting jerking patterns across the rock. Every time the flame flickered, the creature's shadow shifted ever so slightly, as though the thing had more limbs or a different shape we could not properly see. For a moment, nothing happened. The forest behind us remained silent. The ravine ahead remained still. Only that impossible shadow loomed on the stone. Then the snow at our feet changed. It did not sink or crack like before. It rippled. A long wave rolled through it, starting near the rock wall and moving outward in a smooth, steady motion, as if something enormous had passed beneath the surface. Tom stumbled backward, gripping my shoulder as the snow rose in a circular pattern around us. "Something's under us," he whispered, his voice thin. "It's under the ground." He was right. The snow wasn't reacting to weight. It was reacting to movement. Something was traveling below, carving a perfect ring around where we stood. The trembling wasn't violent. It was controlled, precise, as though the creature were drawing boundaries. When the ring closed, the snow inside it began to change color, dimming from white to a faint frost-gray hue. The air above it shimmered with a thin mist, rising like steam from a thawing river. Tom grabbed my coat. "We have to move." I didn't answer. My eyes were locked on the center of the ring where the snow sagged downward, melting into a shallow depression. The metallic scent hit me hard, sharper than before, almost stinging. My vision wavered for a moment, and a cold pressure pressed against the inside of my skull. The creature was close, too close. The shadow stretched across the ravine wall again, longer now, its head tilting in a slow, unnatural angle, as if listening to our breath. Its outline pulsed faintly, not with sound, but with a deep, rhythmic vibration I could feel in my chest. Then the snow inside the ring lifted. It rose in a sudden, silent burst, forming a tall, spiraling pillar that twisted upward like smoke trapped in ice. I heard Tom gasp beside me. The snow did not fall. It stayed suspended, forming thin, curved ridges, almost like ribs. The creature was showing us something, a warning, a message, or a shape that mattered to it. I stepped back, unable to breathe. Tom whispered, "What is it doing?" Before I could answer, the pillar broke apart without a sound. Snow scattered in all directions, falling in perfect, delicate arcs. But when it landed, the snow did not settle naturally. It formed shapes, whole shapes, shapes I recognized, tracks, but not ours, not wolves, not anything I had seen on Earth. Rows of elongated prints stretched out from the shattered pillar, curving through the ravine in a pattern that made my stomach twist. They weren't random. They formed a symbol, a large, circular design the creature had carved into the snow with impossible precision. Tom stared at it, his breath shaking. "It's marking territory," he said. "Or marking us," I whispered. The metallic scent thickened again, so strong it almost tasted bitter on my tongue. The shadow on the wall lowered its head as if acknowledging what it had created. Then the prints in the snow began to sink. One by one, each elongated track compressed into the ground, deeper and deeper, until they disappeared beneath the surface entirely. Tom's lantern flickered violently. The flame bent sideways, blown by a wind I could not feel. The creature was beneath us again. The ground trembled lightly, not with weight, but with intention. Tom grabbed my arm. "We have to get out of here, now." The snow behind us shifted once more, this time opening in a slow, deliberate split, revealing a dark hollow beneath the surface, like a mouth forming from the earth itself. It was no longer studying us, it was inviting us, and that was far worse. We kept moving until the trees swallowed the ravine behind us. Even after we stopped, my legs still felt the urge to run. The forest pressed in closely on both sides, and there was a heaviness in the air that had not been there earlier. The metallic scent clung to everything we carried. It hung on our coats and drifted into our breath. It felt less like a smell and more like something alive that followed us. Tom wanted to push forward, but the light had dropped too low. Our lantern oil was running out, and the forest ahead looked thick enough to swallow the last of the evening. We found a narrow space between two fallen trunks and decided to stop there. It did not feel safe. It only felt like the least dangerous option. The fire we built fought against the cold, but the flame behaved strangely. It rose and fell in irregular pulses. It burned high for a moment and then dropped to a thin line without warning. The wood was dry. It should have burned evenly. Tom added more branches, but the fire still refused to settle. "It is watching us," Tom said quietly. He was not guessing. The feeling was unmistakable. Something held its attention on us. It was not the sensation of being followed. It was the sensation of being studied. My skin prickled as if a cold breath had touched the back of my neck. We sat close to the fire with our rifles beside us. The horses refused to come closer than the fallen trunks. Their bodies trembled. They kept staring into the dark as though something moved just beyond the tree line. Every so often, one of them exhaled sharply, as if startled by a presence we could not see. The air changed again. The cold shifted in the space around us. It did not fall evenly across the clearing. It moved in patches, drifting from tree to tree. One moment the cold pressed against my right arm. The next moment it glided behind me and touched the back of my neck. It felt like a large shape moving in slow circles around us. Tom noticed it too. "It is moving around us," he whispered. The fire dimmed then. The shadows it cast no longer matched the movements of the flame. They twisted in slow shapes that looked too deliberate to be random. The ground beside me crunched softly. I felt something brush against the front of my boot. It was a gentle touch, cold and careful, as if testing how I might react. I jerked backward and grabbed my rifle. Nothing was there. No print in the snow, no broken branch. Tom tightened his grip around the lantern. "It is seeing how close it can come." The wind shifted and the metallic scent grew stronger. It stung the inside of my nose and made my eyes water. The horses froze. Their bodies turned rigid. Their ears stayed pinned in one direction. Then we heard it, a slow exhale, long and controlled. Not an animal, not a human, something that existed between both. It came from the darkness beyond the firelight, then from behind us, then from somewhere above our heads. The breathing surrounded us completely. The creature moved with absolute calm. It did not sound hurried. It did not sound excited. It sounded patient, as if fear was something it wanted to measure carefully. Tom raised the lantern. The flame bent sideways, not from wind but from a shift in the air just beyond our reach. Something large was there. It had weight, even if we could not see it. "Show yourself," Tom said, though he already sounded defeated. The snow responded instead. A long imprint appeared beside him, then another behind me, then more, forming a half circle around the fire. The marks looked like fingers pressed gently into the powder. They were evenly spaced and perfectly shaped. The imprints grew deeper, slowly, precisely. They sank deeper into the snow, as if pulled downward by a deliberate force. They did not collapse randomly. They lowered in a synchronized motion until they vanished entirely. The creature was beneath us again. The ground trembled softly, not enough to crack the snow, just enough to let us know it was moving under the surface. Tom swallowed hard. "We have to leave," he said. Before I could answer, the snow behind us split in a straight line. A hollow opened beneath it, dark and deep, as if the earth itself had parted. The creature was not hunting us anymore. It was guiding us, and it had already chosen the direction. We left the clearing as soon as the snow closed behind us. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us looked back. The air around us felt alive with pressure, as if the trees themselves were leaning inward to listen. Every step forward felt too loud. Every breath felt borrowed. The metallic scent followed us without fading. It clung to the back of my throat in a way that made swallowing difficult. Tom walked ahead for a while. His shoulders were rigid, and his hands trembled even though he gripped the lantern with all his strength. I wanted to tell him to slow down or to rest, but something in the forest disagreed with the idea of stopping. The silence had weight. It pushed us forward. The horses were the first to sense it. They stopped moving entirely. Their bodies stiffened. Their ears pointed toward a cluster of pines a few meters ahead. Their breathing thinned into small, sharp exhales. Tom whispered for them to calm, but the words did not matter. They were not listening to him. They were listening to something else. I stepped past them slowly and entered the narrow space between the pines. The snow there was untouched. No prints, no drag marks, nothing to suggest movement of any kind, but the air felt colder in that single place, as if something had stood there moments before. Then I smelled it. Metal, cold metal, the same scent that had followed us since dawn, but stronger. So strong it stung my eyes. I called Tom over. He moved beside me, raising the lantern so the light could reach deeper into the shadows. That was when we saw it. Just beyond the tree line, lying on its side with its legs tucked unnaturally close to its body, was one of the horses. The same horse that had been alive moments earlier. The same horse that had refused to step near the clearing. Its neck was bent sharply, too sharply, at an angle no animal could survive. There was no blood, no torn flesh, no bite marks, only a single, clean break. It looked as if someone had lifted the horse gently and then folded it to the ground. The body lay perfectly aligned in the snow. Even the mane seemed smoothed into place. Tom staggered backward until he hit a tree. He pressed his hand against the bark as if trying to steady himself. His breathing broke into uneven gasps. "This is not hunting," he said quietly. "This is something else." He was right. A predator kills for food or instinct. This was not a kill for survival. This was a demonstration, a message. I knelt beside the horse and touched the snow around it. The ground was still warm, not from the animal, from something else, something that had stood here for long enough to leave heat in the earth. I lifted my hand and realized it was shaking. Tom stepped closer again. His voice was barely audible. "Why would it do this without sound?" I looked at the surrounding snow. There were no tracks. The creature had approached without disturbing a single flake. It had killed without noise. It had arranged the body with precision that bordered on intention. "It wants us to understand something," I said. Tom shook his head fiercely. "I do not want to understand." The trees shifted then. Not with wind, because there was none. They shifted from weight. Something large passed between them. Branches bent slightly. Snow dropped from limbs in a slow, steady curtain. The metallic scent thickened in the air, filling the space like fog. Tom raised his rifle, but he did not aim it. His arms were too unsteady to hold the barrel straight. He looked at me with wide, desperate eyes. "It is close," he whispered. I did not answer. I did not need to. The truth was all around us. The creature had killed without effort. It had placed the body as carefully as a man might place a tool. It had approached without sound, and it had done it all while we were still awake. There was no safety in movement, no safety in stillness. We were no longer tracking it. It was herding us, and this kill was only the beginning. We left the dead horse behind us, though it felt more accurate to say the creature allowed us to walk away from it. Every step forward carried the weight of its presence. Even the snow seemed quieter beneath our boots. as if sound itself feared drawing attention. The forest grew denser again. Branches drooped under frost, forming narrow corridors of white and shadow. Tom held the lantern high, but the light reached only a short distance. The darkness beyond it looked thicker than night. It looked inhabited. We walked without speaking for what felt like hours. The metallic scent drifted in and out of the air, always strongest when we thought we were making progress. The creature was not behind us. It was moving beside us, shifting positions with deliberate patience. When the trees finally opened, the transition was so sudden that both of us stopped at the same moment. The clearing ahead was unlike anything we had seen on the ridge or in the timberland. It was wide and perfectly round, as if carved from the forest by a careful hand rather than shaped by nature. The snow inside the clearing was marked by dozens of shallow depressions. They were arranged in patterns that spiraled outward from the center. Each depression was smooth and identical, as if something had pressed into the snow with equal pressure each time. Tom stepped forward slowly. "This is not natural," he said. He did not have to convince me. Nothing in that clearing felt accidental. The placement of the depressions formed shapes that seemed familiar at first glance, but the more I looked, the more they resembled nothing I could name. Not letters, not symbols, not anything I had seen in any book or carving. They looked like thoughts turned into patterns, thoughts pressed into snow by something that understood more than instinct. At the center of the clearing stood a single tree. It was old, taller than the others, with its trunk stripped of bark from the roots to the branches. The wood underneath was pale and smooth, almost polished. No claw marks, no roughness. It looked as though every trace of life had been removed from its surface. Tom approached it slowly and touched the exposed wood. "It is warm," he whispered. "Warm." In the middle of a frozen clearing, warm under his hand as if the tree had been touched repeatedly by something that carried heat. My stomach tightened. We followed the patterns in the snow, circling the tree. Each spiral led toward smaller markings, as if guiding us deeper into the creature's design. Some of the depressions were arranged in perfect lines, others curved in ways that made no sense to the human eye. The more we looked, the more Tom began to shake. "This is not territory marking," he said. "It is something else." He was right. A predator marks places to hunt. A predator leaves signs for other predators. But this clearing did not speak the language of animals. It spoke the language of structure, order, instruction. It looked like a diagram, a map, a plan. We stepped closer to one of the larger spirals. The snow inside it shifted as if stirred by wind, but the air was perfectly still. A soft indentation formed at the center of the spiral, deepening slowly. I knelt beside it and watched as it pressed farther into the snow. No sound accompanied it, no visible force. It was as if the ground itself obeyed a silent command. Tom backed away. "It is showing us," he said. "It is showing us that it can shape this place whenever it wants." The metallic scent thickened again. The air vibrated with a faint pressure. I felt it in my chest and behind my eyes. The patterns around the clearing seemed to pulse in response. The stripped trees seemed to breathe. Then the snow behind us shifted with a crisp, sudden crack. We spun around. New depressions were forming in the snow. This time they were not spirals. They were footsteps, long, narrow, evenly spaced. They appeared one by one, leading from the tree line straight toward us. The creature was not in the clearing when we arrived. It called us here. It shaped the ground. It prepared the space, and now it was stepping into it. Tom whispered my name, but his voice shook too much to say more. The footsteps stopped a few meters away. The snow rose in a smooth line, as if something tall pressed upward beneath it. We were not witnessing an accident. We were witnessing intention, and standing in the center of the clearing, surrounded by symbols we could not understand, we realized something with absolute clarity. We were not following the creature anymore. It had brought us exactly where it wanted us. The clearing held its silence for several long moments after the new footprints appeared. The air felt too still to trust. Even the wind seemed to hesitate at the edge of the trees, as if afraid to move through the space the creature had shaped. Tom stood rigid beside me, his breath shallow and uneven. I could almost hear his heartbeat in the quiet. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, yet the sense of being watched grew heavier with every second. I stepped back slowly. My boots crunched softly in the snow. The sound felt out of place, like a disturbance the clearing did not welcome. Tom shifted closer to me, lowering the lantern slightly, as if afraid the light itself might provoke whatever was out there. Then the forest changed. The pressure came first, a tightening sensation behind my eyes, like the beginning of a headache, but sharper. It spread across my skull in a slow wave that made my vision blur at the edges. I blinked several times, trying to clear it, but the blur remained. The shapes of the trees around us seemed to stretch and bend, curving in unnatural ways. Tom whispered something beside me, but the sound felt distant, as though it traveled from far away. The pressure grew stronger. I closed my eyes for a moment. Darkness swirled behind my eyelids, yet it did not feel like my own. It felt crowded. Someone or something was moving inside that darkness, pacing behind the thin barrier of my thoughts. A voice brushed against the inside of my mind. It was not a sound, it was a shape, a suggestion, a cold presence forming itself into the idea of a whisper. My chest tightened, my breath hitched. The voice spoke again, pressing closer, trying to settle into the spaces between my memories. I opened my eyes quickly. The clearing was still there, the tree with its stripped bark, the spirals in the snow, the fresh footprints. But everything looked wrong. The colors were too muted, the shadows too long. Tom's figure wavered in the edge of my vision, as if he were standing inside heat rising from a fire. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. His voice shook. His eyes were wide and unfocused, staring at something I could not see. "What do you hear?" I asked. He shook his head. "It keeps saying my name." I stepped toward him, but the ground shifted slightly under my feet, as though something beneath the snow moved in response to my concern. The pressure behind my eyes pulsed again, stronger this time. A cold sensation slid down the back of my neck, almost like a fingertip tracing the line of my spine. Tom dropped the lantern. The flame flickered and dimmed, but did not go out. He pressed both hands against his temples and sank to his knees. "It is in my head," he said. His voice came out strained and thin. "It is showing me something." The clearing vibrated faintly, though the snow did not move. The stripped tree seemed to tilt slightly, as if bowing its tall frame toward us. The symbols in the snow shimmered softly, their shapes blurring at the edges. I felt the presence again, pushing gently against my thoughts, pressing deeper, searching for an opening. Tom gasped suddenly. I reached for him, but my hand froze halfway. The cold voice inside my head returned. It did not form words, but impressions, a sensation of being followed, a memory of standing alone near the ridge, a vision of something watching from behind the trees, then another sensation, something older, something hungry. Tom screamed once, sharp and short. He clutched at the snow, leaving deep marks as though trying to hold the ground still. He turned toward me then, but his eyes were not focused on my face. They were staring past me at something only he could see. "It is behind you," he said. My blood ran cold. I did not turn around. I knew nothing physical would be there. The creature did not need to stand behind me to make him believe it was. It was inside his mind, and it was inside mine. The pressure reached its peak. For a moment I thought my vision would collapse entirely. Then everything stopped. The pressure vanished. The sounds faded. The cold presence withdrew like a tide, slipping back into the sea. Tom fell forward into the snow, trembling. The clearing went still again, silent, waiting. The creature had not attacked us physically. It had tested something inside us. It had tasted fear. It had explored the mind, and now it knew exactly how to use it. Tom lay in the snow for several minutes after the pressure vanished. His breaths came in quick, shallow bursts. The clearing around us was still again, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt occupied. The trees seemed to lean inward, as if they were listening for our next move. I reached down to help him up, but he flinched away from my hand, as if he no longer recognized it. His eyes darted from shadow to shadow. "It is not gone," he whispered. I tried to steady him, but I felt it too. The creature's presence lingered in the air like cold residue. It was no longer pushing into our thoughts, but it had left something behind, a faint echo, a trace of itself. The clearing felt shaped by its mind just as much as the snow was shaped by its markings. Tom stood suddenly and stumbled backward. "We need to run," he said. He did not look at me when he said it. His eyes were fixed on the stripped tree at the center of the clearing. The bark moved. At first I thought it was my imagination, the remnants of whatever the creature had pressed into my head. But then the pale wood rippled, bending inward, as if pulled from behind. Shapes formed beneath its surface, long and narrow, almost like limbs pressing outward. The tree was not alive. It was reacting. It was responding to something that moved near it. Tom broke into a sprint toward the opposite side of the clearing. I called out to him, but he did not look back. The snow crunched under his boots as he ran. He passed the first spiral of symbols, then the second, then the third. When he reached the tree line, the forest shifted. The pines closed around him with an unnatural swiftness, branches weaving together like ribs locking shut. The shadows swallowed him instantly. One moment he was there, the next moment he was gone. There was no scream, no struggle, no sound at all, only the wet thud of snow settling after the trees finished moving. I tried to run toward him, but the clearing resisted me. The snow hardened beneath my feet, thickening like packed ice. I slipped and caught myself on the ground. My hand sank into one of the shallow depressions the creature had made earlier. It felt warmer than the snow around it, too warm to belong to a winter forest. The metallic scent thickened opened again. The air pressed against my chest. The symbols in the clearing pulsed faintly, as if lit from beneath by a heartbeat that did not belong to any living thing. A long indentation formed in the snow behind me, then another and another. The prints were deep and evenly spaced. They led in a straight line toward the center of the clearing. The creature was not hiding anymore. I stood slowly and backed away from the footprints. My legs shook. My breath fogged the air in short bursts. The snow around me shifted as if something massive passed beneath it, circling, choosing a position. I expected an attack. Instead, everything went still. The pressure in my skull lessened. The air warmed slightly. The presence withdrew, not in defeat, in decision. The creature did not want me. It had wanted Tom. It had chosen him. The trees opened again, just enough to show a narrow path leading away from the clearing. The footprints behind me sank deeper, fading as they pressed into the earth. I understood the message without needing words. Leave. You have seen enough. I ran then, though I never heard anything chase me. The forest did not fight me. The pines did not close. The snow did not ripple beneath my feet. The creature had what it wanted. I was no longer part of its purpose. I did not look back, not once. When I reached the ridge the next morning, the sun was rising. The world looked normal, calm, empty. There were no footprints, no symbols, no stripped trees. The clearing was gone, swallowed by the forest as if it had never existed. Tom was never found. People asked what happened. I told them only what they would believe. A storm, a fall, a wolf. But the truth has stayed with me every day since. The creature let me live, not because I escaped, because it allowed it. Some nights I wake and smell the metallic scent again. Some nights I feel the pressure behind my eyes. Some nights I hear my name spoken from a place that is not the room I am sleeping in. And I know it is not finished. What happened in northern Montana in 1911 has never been explained. The reports faded. The witnesses stayed silent, and the forest kept its secrets. But stories like this remind us of one thing. When something ancient chooses to remain hidden, it does so for a reason. If you want more real accounts of encounters that should not exist, make sure you subscribe and give this video a like. It helps us uncover more stories the world tried to forget. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from, and if you would have followed the tracks or turned back. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay careful.